Welcome back everyone. In this lesson we are going to explore how to read properties from a property file. So the problem we are trying to solve here is, let's say we have different environments, and if we have that, then our URL that we are using over here to access Best Buy will differ from production to staging or UAT, or however you call your different environments. And also you will have different test data that might differ, like user accounts and all that stuff. And in order to do that, to switch from one environment to another, you cannot hard code the values in your test. And the easiest way you would differentiate between them is have multiple properties file for each environment. So to start, we are going to create a new property file. I'm going to my Java package and I'm going to add a new package. Actually, I'm going to add a new folder under a new directory under main, and that will be the resources package. And here I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this production.properties. And in this properties file, I would like to store the URL. In our case, for production, we are using this URL over here. Okay, so this will be our first property. You don't actually need the codes for it. Perfect. So now that we have a property files, we need a way to actually read them. So let's create a service. I'm going to add a new package called services. And here I'm going to create a new class. And let's call this class environment reader service. Perfect. So in order to read the property file, and in order to have all those properties initialized before any test, I'm going to use something that is called a static block in Java. And this static block is used for static initialization of a class. So the code that will be inside this block will be executed only once, and the first time the code is loaded into memory, and this will be initialized before anything else. So let's start to code our static block. First of all, in order to differentiate between property files that we are going to pass to our tests or test execution, we need to pass a property file in which we specify the name of the property file. So I'm going to call this environment file, and this will be passed as a system property when you execute the test. So let's call this system property environment, and how this will work is when you execute your test, either directly from IntelliJ or if you use Maven, you can specify a property like so. You can pass it over here actually, -d, the name of the property, which is environment, and then the actual value, which in our case will be production dot. Actually, let's not pass the file extension, just the name. So if you do something like this, if you do something like this, when I invoke this code over here, system get property, because you passed it as an argument either in your test or when you run your test via Maven, the system will know of this property and it will pass the value that you use there inside this argument. Okay, so let's move on from this. Let's say I forget to pass this environment variable. What I can do is have a default, and let's check if this is null. So if it's null, I'm going to go with the default value, which will be, in our case, production. Right now I have only one property file, but I will add one during this lesson, one more. Okay, so if I don't pass this environment variable, I will go with the default of production. Perfect. Now, next, I would want to construct a relative path from resources to my property file. And I already have this name production, so all I need to do, declare a file path. So I already have production, which is in the environment file, and I need to add to this the extension properties. Let me spell this. Properties. Okay. And now I have the path, the relative path from resources, because I will read this using a class loader from resources directly. Okay, so I have the path, and now I will try to read the file over here as a stream. So how we are going to do this is use the class reference, use the class get class loader, class loader, and then get the resources as stream. And then here I'm going to pass the path that we just constructed above. And I need to store this somewhere. And I'm going to store this in the properties class. So I will need to declare here another field, this private static properties from Java util. I'm going to call it props. Let's instantiate it here. Okay, so I'm going to use this to store whatever I read from that file. Okay. And I will do this over here. The properties class actually has a load, and you can pass a reader to it. Like so. And then it will know how to populate this properties object. If you can see over here, it's highlighted with red, which means it throws some exceptions that I need to handle. Let's do that. Okay, let's also log a message over here. Did not manage to read properties file. Okay. Okay, this seems fine. Now, we also need a way to access this. So I'm going to generate a getter. Perfect. And actually, I want I actually want the specific property, not the entire object. So let's say get property and passes a key as an argument. So this will be a string value. And in props, I'm going to do get property on it and pass the key. So basically, I can say the key would be, in my case, URL, and the value that will be returned is this URL. Okay, this seems fine, in my opinion. Let's see this in action now. So I said that we would want to replace the URLs we are using in our test with this environment reader over here. So how do we do this? I can invoke it here like so. Environment reader service, get property, and then pass the key URL. And this will work fine. Or maybe I can do a method inside the Playwright runner. Can do a method like this. Protected string get property, pass the key, environment reader service, get property, pass the key, and return this. Like so. And in my test, this is a little bit less verbose, but the functionality is the same. So instead of doing this, I can do just get property. And you can use this service anywhere in your code. Okay, and I have another test over here that can benefit from the same functionality. This needs to be a string. Okay. This seems fine, so let's try to run it. Now, as I said, in my case, I'm passing this as a property, system property, but what I can do, so regardless if this is here or not, it will default to production. Let's try it like this. Let's try to run this and see if the functionality is still the same. And then we will try to create a new property file that will take us to a different URL. Okay, so this works fine. It has now read the property from this property file, so it replaced URL with this. Now let's create a new property file. We will call this staging, and let's put a completely different URL over here. I'm going with Google, since I do not know the staging environment for Best Buy. Okay, and this time I'm going to put a debug point over here. I'm going to stop my current debug session, and instead, I want to run this test, and instead of production, I'm going to pass it staging. Okay, so my expectation now would be that I'm going to navigate to Google. As you can see over here, if we do an evaluate on the get property, it will return the value from the staging property file and not from the production one, because I specify this property over here when I run this test. And I believe that the first iteration when I debug the test, so if you go again and just debug it like this, it will start a new session that will not have this property set. So be careful if you have it or not. In my case, I was lucky because it defaulted to production. So in the future, we can add multiple properties in our property files. We can, for example, say something like browser. And let's say I want to run Chrome or I want to run Firefox. And then I can implement custom logic around it, let's say in my Playwright runner. And instead of calling the Chromium from Playwright, I can call Firefox. And this is a way you can switch between browsers using your property files. But I guess we can do this in a different lesson. And so far this is all for the property file lesson. I hope it makes sense for everyone, and I will see you guys in the next one.